All right, what's up, my brother? So in this video, I want to deal with divorce. I do a lot of coaching in a men's community, and often in group calls, a topic comes up with, this is happening with my ex-wife, the custody issues, she's doing this, what do I do? And there's a lot of, I guess, acrimony and chaos in guys' lives. So I've got 5 points here that I want to cover in this video in no particular order. Selection process before marriage, the 4 types of divorce, the notion of chivalry during the process, how things usually progress over time, and the planning component of it. So let's hop on the road and get started on this. I have a brand new camera, which is apparently exquisite in low light conditions. So let's see how this video comes out today. All right, so the first point I marked down here is the selection process for marriage. Not a lot of people put a ton of thought into the selection process, which is why they end up typically with very difficult or bad divorces. In the divorce process, it's generally fairly acrimonious. It's not fun, it's not pleasant, it's not easy. Although there are some people that tell you, just get divorced, bro, everything will be fine. That's kind of what, like where I was at when I was going through the process almost 15 years ago now. And I've talked to a lot of guys since then. And I met a fella a few weeks ago, actually a couple months ago now, if I'm being totally honest, who spoke at my event in Toronto at the 1% Forum, who is a forensic accountant. And he happens to have spent a very long time dealing with both men and women in the divorce process. He's represented women to make sure they can get as much money back as possible. And he's also represented men from the position of trying to protect their wealth to the extent that he can. I did a podcast with him. You might want to check that out if you're in the planning process of a divorce. That's in a pop-up banner on the top right, and his name is Ryan Benson. It's a pretty interesting conversation. Anyway, so back to the 4 types of divorce. There are no good divorces. There are, at best, average, maybe more egalitarian type of split-ups or breakups. But there's no good scenario where if you're a guy, you're going to come out the other side usually better off, with some rare exceptions. Maybe if you talk to Ryan about some planning before you untie the knot and you have a lot in the way of assets, you can protect some of it. But for the 4 types, they just consecutively get worse and worse. And he kind of explains that in the podcast that I'm on with him. But essentially, it goes from bad to a walking, living nightmare, with the kind of things that can happen when you untie the knot. So just understand from the get-go, guys, you kind of got your back up against the wall. It's not a very good position to be in. I remember when I had to untie the knot, the first thing my lawyer told me was, well, you don't want to go to trial, Rich, because in family court here in Canada, if you have the penis, then you're going to lose. And that was like a big frying pan to the forehead moment for me. And maybe some of you guys have had that moment. Maybe some of you guys are getting there right now, but usually at some point, things get so difficult and so tough that you come to realize, yeah, this process ain't fun, it ain't easy, or it ain't simple. Let's talk about chivalry next. Now, for those of you going through the process, look, guys, the stats are overwhelming. They're insane. Men self-delete 10 times, at rates 10 times higher than what women do going through the divorce process. Everything is stacked up against you. It's very high risk for men and low reward, the entire marriage process. For women with marriage and divorce, the way family law is written in most Western countries, it's very low risk, generally speaking, and high reward, the way family law rewards women. And ultimately, at the end of the day, encourages them to behave in such a way that isn't that favorable. But one of the biggest mistakes I see guys making when it comes to untying the knot for themselves and getting divorced is they think it's a time to be chivalrous. And the divorce courts or family law or the negotiation process, wherever you happen to be in that, is not the time for chivalry. You can do chivalry when you're dating. You can open her car door and pay for her dinner and stuff like that and hold the door open and put on her coat. That's fine, if you're about that in the dating process. But there is absolutely no room for chivalry in divorce. And those that behave chivalrous during the divorce process, I'm talking about men specifically, those that behave chivalrous often get punished, and punished very, very badly during the process. You need to follow the law to a T. Whatever you can do to leverage any slight benefit, no matter how small it may be where you live, and some benefits do exist depending on where you're at, you have to do it. You just have to do it. There has to be a precedent set that you're not a rug that is going to be walked all over, and that you have a backbone, and that you will stand up for yourself, and more specifically, what's right for your kids. And generally speaking, what's right for children, if you're untying the knot and you're going divorce and you got kids and you're dealing with custody, is they get a lot of access to both parents. What happens in most cases is guys will try to be chivalrous and they're like, oh, let's see if we can, work this out, or we'll just deal with this later. And then they listen to some story or some narrative from their ex that basically tells them, yeah, just sign this piece of paper and we'll make it all work out. Okay, no problem, sweetheart. It's all good, thinking maybe that they're going to get him back or whatever idea is running through their mind. No. You need to, if you want to have access to your kids, if you want to parent them properly, if you want to be able to have a say in their upbringing, medical procedures, and what kind of schools they go to, their extracurricular activities, all of these things, it's far better off that you have a shared parenting agreement. So don't fall for the whole chivalry thing. Just be nice to her, give her what she wants, sign on the piece of paper, bro. Trust me, I know that some guys might have some guilt. They were banging their secretary or something like that, and they might have some guilt around it. But it doesn't matter. Women have no shame and no guilt around it when they're on the offside. In fact, they don't behave any better, and oftentimes they'll behave pretty much worse. So, you can get more of those stories in the podcast that I did with Ryan Benson, but it's a really interesting component and story there. All right, the next thing that I want to cover is that things do get better. It doesn't matter where you are right now. Maybe you're feeling like you're at rock bottom. This is the end of the world. I'm never going to see my kids again. Trust me, dude, I've been there, done it. I got the t-shirt. I spent probably months and months reading through case law. If anything helped me understand the process a little bit better and what I was really truly up against and how the deck was stacked up against me, it was reading case law. If you live in Canada, you can find all divorce case law at canlii.org. I think it's canlii.org. And if you go to that site, you can look up all kinds of custody battles, all kinds of alimony battles, fights over the matrimonial property, retirement savings, income, all kinds of stuff. You'll see every single battle there play out in front of you in a public record, because when you go to court, when it comes to family law, there's always a public record on what is said in the courtroom, and you can read all of that. And I spent a lot of time sort of like getting my head around, oh, so this is how the process works. So just take your time with it. Understand that things do get better. For the vast majority of men, they go through like this anger phase, this pain phase. Am I going to get to see my kids again? Am I going to see them grow up? Is the new dude that she's with going to spend more time parenting them than I'm going to spend time parenting them? There's all kinds of thoughts that go through your mind, guys, and that's totally normal. But at the end of the day, if you're a good man, you're good at being a man, you did all the right things while you were married, you obviously love and care for your kids and all that sort of stuff, the courts are starting to see that fathers are not disposable anymore, and they're starting to make more and more concessions to make sure the dad is included in the process. And they're starting to tell the moms, the women during the divorce process, especially their lawyers, you might want to be a little more flexible in this area. You might want to yield a little bit on this sort of thing. So things are starting to improve. They're not improving that much. But what I am going to tell you here with this point, guys, is things do get better. Time heals all wounds. There's dynamics like the leave-or and the leave-ee, and usually the one that's left is the one that's more butthurt than the one that's leaving. Women initiate 80% of the divorces still, so the vast majority of cases, he's being left. So he's being left, he's not seeing his kids, he may not even be living in the matrimonial home, she might have kicked him out, there may be all kinds of legal fees piling up, all kinds of accusations, many of them could be false. All of this is like, it gets worse and worse and worse, and I get it, and this is part of the reason why men self-delete at a rate 10 times higher than women, because it's not a fun or easy process for men. It's very difficult. So just understand, time will heal these wounds. If she's butthurt because you're leaving her, at some point she'll find another guy and she'll become his problem, and you won't have to worry about it as much. Your phone won't be blowing up with stupid texts. Trust me, all of these things improve with time. It doesn't happen over weeks or months, but as the years sort of move on and you go through a few Christmases and you see your kids grow up and you do extracurriculars and you do the summer camps and all that sort of stuff, you will see things improve dramatically. Trust me on that one. And then the last point that I want to make, guys, is that planning is really everything. The vast majority of women will spend a long amount of time planning their divorce when they're the ones that are going to initiate it, when they're the ones that want to untie the knot. Believe me. And Ryan Benson also confirmed this, the forensic accountant that deals with the divorce process as a consultant that I mentioned earlier. Again, the podcast, it's on the top right. they will spend sometimes years planning it. You know, in certain places in the world, I think in California, after 10 years, there's lifetime alimony. So women might be 8.5 years in, hate the fact that they're married. They know that, you know, their husband's banging the secretary, and she'll just stay till she gets to the 10-year mark and then file the papers then to make sure that she gets lifetime alimony. So there's a lot more planning done on the women's part, whereas men are a lot more reactive. You know, we don't generally initiate the divorce process. We're generally the respondent to it. But if you see it coming and you see the writing on the wall, it's a really, really good idea to do some serious planning. Now, with that being said, there's really a lot to cover on the planning notion. I put a 3.5-hour course together. It's called the Unplugged Alpha's Guide to Divorce. That'll be pinned below in the top comment. If you're also a member of my School of Unplugging, you can buy the course in that school at a slightly greater discount than what you would just pay just buying the course. So both the School of Unplugging and the divorce course is there if you want to get right into the weeds on the details and how to plan it. But again, if you're at the planning stage, you're not at the post stage, you're not at the fighting for custody stage. If you're at the point where it's like, okay, this ain't working out, I see the writing on the wall, this looks like this is done, I'm gonna have to untie this knot, then do some proper planning. Grab my divorce course and get your head wrapped around what you're about to go through, because for the vast majority of men, it's the most difficult thing that they do in their entire lives. Anyway, hope you guys are having an awesome day. Peace out.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.